set some amazing context, right, on understanding operations excellence, how it plays out, why it's important. I think the set of questions that we got in between, right, from Pranjal, from Vivek, from Vatsal, it really helped get deeper into some of the examples and the concepts. I think we'll move on a little bit in the conversation from the what to a little bit of the how, right? Maybe trying to understand some of these examples that you gave, these approaches or these concepts. If folks in the call, right, who are doing operational roles, and as you said, these need not be people purely in ops, right, but anybody who's doing something in an ops focused industry and needs to think about how excellence and how these three variables can be optimized in an ongoing basis, how would they think about the approach or the process of going about doing some of these things, right? So Shogoto, do you want to take this segment, especially since you're in a role today where you're constantly thinking about how you deploy operations excellence on an ongoing basis?
Yeah. So about the impossible trinity, that's something like I totally relate to. This is something I've now come to realize I've faced almost at every juncture wherever I've been dealing with operations, whether it be in a construction infrastructure setup, whether it be running a hospital, or whether it be right now being part of a capability center, right? So all of these things like have implications on the day-to-day operations that are going on. So on this, actually, I would like to ask a couple of questions. Now we understand what it is that it means when we say that we want to drive operations excellence. Now let's talk a bit about how we drive it. So let's take either your case with Amazon, or whether anyone is starting up or setting up their entire journey of ops excellence. How do you do it? How do you approach setting this entire piece up at a new firm where you know everything is nothing is figured out, right? You have to figure out how to drive the entire business and how to set all of your processes there. So how do you go about navigating this entire chaos and setting your processes in place?
Yeah. Awesome. So, see, the core of excellence is improvement, right? And there's a very popular saying which is, what is not measured is never improved. Uh, uh, so the key to actually succeeding in ops excellence is actually making it as objective as possible. Make it metric driven. Remove ambiguity. So the first, in my mind, the first step to ops excellence is actually defining what you want to excel in. Right? Define that metric. Right? If it's cost, it can be a cost per unit or variable cost or fixed cost. Service level, then you're talking P90 service levels, P50 service levels. If you're talking quality, then again different measures of how you want to uh, define quality of your service. Right? Uh, Now, the moment you identify your metrics, right, the way it works is make it into a tiered structure, right? There are tier one metrics, then there are tier two metrics, and then there are tier three metrics. Tier one metrics is, in my mind, what you call as the output metric, right? That is essentially what you want to drive and what you want to control. That's what you want to achieve. Now, these tier one metrics are output metrics, but they're controlled by a bunch of input metrics, right? Uh, so define those input metrics and output metrics very clearly, and put targets on each of this, right? And obviously targets have to be talking to each other. So if I have to achieve X to Y on an output metric, where should all my input metrics actually move, right? To make the entire ambition as objective as possible. And second part is, once you do this, then bring visibility to all of this, right? Surface this very often, like, and I think it works beautifully. For instance, when I used to be in manufacturing, uh, on the manufacturing floor, there used to be a huge dashboard which will define all of these metrics. And these metrics will actually be updated sometimes at an hourly level, at a weekly level. Some of these metrics can be updated at a monthly level. But the moment it is staring in your face, right, you just know what is going wrong, right? So bringing that visibility is key to achieving ops excellence. The third part, which is the most critical part, is ownership, right? Now, there is what I've learned in my career is everyone's ownership is no one's ownership. everyone's responsibility is no one's responsibility, right? So each of this metric has to be owned by one single person. Tell me who is losing sleep over that one metric? Whose neck is on the line for that one metric across the board, right? The moment you fix this ownership, you will see numbers moving magically, right? Otherwise, people will just brush things under the carpet. It is very easy to give excuses, but regardless of what happens, if there is one person held accountable for that number, that person immaterial, regardless, will go and figure out how to actually achieve that number, right? So fix that ownership, right? That's the key. So for defining metrics, bringing visibility, and then fixing ownership. This is part one of your strategy, right? If you do this right, then 50% of your problem is solved. Now, the second part of your problem is, okay, I know there is a number to improve. I know its dependency on some of the target metrics. How do I actually improve it, right? So there and there are a lot of beautiful frameworks in ops excellence. So Six Sigma, by the way, is a beautiful concept. I don't know how many of you have been exposed to it. More relevant in the manufacturing setup, not much in the current tech ops kind of a setup, but there's a process called DMAIC: define, measure, analyze, improve, and control. Right? That's the loop that we follow. So first, define your problem statement, measure the improvement that you want to make, then analyze what is going wrong, then actually put process in place, and then there are controls in place to make sure that the benefits are sustained. So you can read about it online. DMAIC is a very, very popular framework in Six Sigma, and it kind of works beautifully. Or what you can always do is you need to brainstorm for how things can improve. Like, for instance, I always believe that collective judgment always trumps individual expertise. If there is a metric and you want to improve it, call for a workshop, call for a brainstorming session, get 10 people inside the room, just have a very open-ended discussion on what all can you do to improve this metric. And people will not believe me, people will come up with like numerous, a wide array of ideas. Keep that as a whiteboarding exercise, and then you go back and then figure out what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, right? So after your first phase of identifying metrics and fixing ownership, then it's problem solving. The problem solving part is the more difficult part, I would say, because sometimes there are macro elements of your problem that you cannot control, right? Because there are things that are dependent on other cross-functional partners, right? So you want to improve something, but in your process of improving something, you will actually be making someone else's metric worse, right? And I'll give you an example of how this works. Like, for instance, when I was in one of these e-commerce companies, we were running fulfillment operations in warehouse. And in the early days, what we were doing was all customer shipments, as and when it comes, we will take that item. If you're ordering for a shirt, I'll take the shirt, put it in the cover, pack it, ship it to the consumer. And then as part of ops excellence, we realized that, hey, this is very inefficient because consumers are ordering multiple items, right? Why am I shipping it in two different packets to the same consumer for an order that was placed at the same time, right? Sounds very stupid. Now, I wanted to go and fix this. I went to my warehouse team and said, hey, we need to start consolidating shipments. Very basic, because poor consumer experience. If we've ordered two items together, let's at least make our best effort to get both of the items delivered together. Now, the warehouse manager came back and said, you know what, this is going to complicate my process. And I have my own metrics of speed. I have my own metrics of cost. And incorporating this consolidating of shipments is going to mess up with everything, right? And sorry, I'm not supportive. You tell me what is the benefit? Why should I do this? Okay, what's the downside of delivering two different shipments to the consumer? Massive pushback, right? Okay, I went to my finance team and they said, hey, this is so stupid. Why are we shipping two shipments in place of one shipment? Now, finance team said, you know, does it really make a difference? Because if you're shipping two together, then the volume and the weight of the shipment is higher, and it is actually going to cost you higher than shipping it as two different shipments. Are you sure this is really the right thing to do? You don't know, right? Like, massive pushback. Again, how do I convince 10 different people to kind of prove this is the right thing to do? It's It's very difficult. Right now, the best way to do this is first you need leadership alignment, and second there is something called as rapid. It's a beautiful framework that I've learned in Uber, RAPID. It's a BCG framework. You can search for it in the internet. What it means is for every decision to be made in an organization, there is a very clearly defined person who will make the decision. Right? Decisions are not democratic, by the way. That's the beauty of this framework. It says that decisions in organizations are not democratic. You need to identify that one person who will make the decision upfront. So if I need to consolidate shipments, who's that one person who will take the call on whether the consolidation needs to happen or not? And it can be my business manager, it can be my ops manager, whoever it is, right? But that person is the decider of this critical question. And then he will take inputs from multiple people. He'll take inputs from warehouse, he'll take inputs from strategic finance, but the decision maker has to be identified upfront. And otherwise, the entire process will fail. So, and people will think that it's a democratic framework and the entire thing will collapse. The other beauty is everyone will think they are the decision maker. That's the other challenge. Most people who are actually not the decision maker will actually think they are the decision maker in the process. So you need to clarify what everyone's role is. So the fourth rapid framework is clarifying the role. So R is recommend, A is agree, P is perform, I is input, and then D is decide. So these are the different roles that goes into making a decision, and you need to figure out who's the decider in this decision. And the moment you do that, then your process actually becomes seamless because you need to just convince that one person instead of going convincing 10 different people, right? So and then your ops excellence journey is a lot more seamless and smoother and a lot more objective. So so the framework that I feel is useful and I have personally benefited from is define your metrics, give the right visibility, fix ownership of the metrics, and for any juncture where decisions have to be made, please ensure that you know who is the deciding authority for the decision and call it out upfront. And it helps you actually move much faster in your journey of excellence.
Understood. I'm sure this was very, very helpful. I think one of the takeaways that I also got from this, right, is a lot of operations excellence is not even about doing things. It's about deciding how things will be done or who will do them, right? That it's almost that in these components of inefficiency, time, cost, a lot of the baggage is appearing even before the work is actually being done. So a lot of this is more in terms of management principles or management science, and I completely understand now even more what you said in the previous segment about why there isn't necessarily a right time, right? It doesn't matter what scale or what stage a company is operating at. These are things that become almost common sense in some ways, but they're not so obvious. And we've all been in teams or roles or the other point of time where one or more of these principles have not happened, and then that whole analysis paralysis, right, the decisions being in purgatory forever, has been a very, very painful realization.